I, Abhishek Shah, welcome you all on behalf of PK School of Professional and Management Studies. As witnessed in the past few months, the pandemic has affected almost every aspect of the global economy. The most important role has been supply chain management, the most crucial part of any business, which was disrupted by the pandemic in a significantly incomprehensible way. It has to lead to a dynamic shift in the supply chain of many businesses as they were forced to rethink and reevaluate their distribution models. That also has given an opportunity for many businesses to come with innovative strategies and solutions to survive in the market or outsmart their competition in a way that their models can be applied to any scenario, taking in the factors like global pandemic. To discuss the changing role of procurement and supply chain management in COVID today and beyond, we have with us Mr. Vikas Patel. Mr. Vikas Patel is currently serving as a manager of strategy and business design at one of the most notable consulting firms across the world. Notably, Mr. Vikas became a manager at the age of 26, which is the youngest in strategy and business design in any consulting firm. Mr. Vikas is an alumni of NITI Mumbai and has cracked 14 corporate case competition, which is a great fit in itself. He has worked with MNCs like uh, Schlumberger, P&G, and KPMG in the past. I hope you will have the next 1 hour full of learning and exciting things. I kindly request all participants to keep their video and mic off during the session. You can put your question in chat box. We will have Q&A session followed by the presentation. Over to you, Vikas, sir.
Thank you, Abhishek. Before we start, I just want to thank Abhishek and Preet for organizing such a session. I know like they're working so hard to bring a lot of knowledge and opportunities for all of you. So kudos to their effort, like both of them. Abhishek, can you present the PPT as well, which I forwarded to you, so I mean walk everybody through the slides. Yeah,
Yes, sir. Is it visible?
yeah, it is visible, Abhishek. We can go to the next slide.
Okay.
Yeah. So before going into the basics of operations, procurement, and supply chain management, I just thought that it's really important to understand what's happening outside. And till that point, we are not cognizant of the market factors and how they are impacting the various aspects of the functional life as well as any other component of an industry. We won't be able to correlate with the findings and won't be able to come up with the right analogies. So if you see any reports like from the World Bank, Moody, the Ratings, or S&P Global, everybody is saying that India might be contracting by 3 to 5% in the current fiscal year. The previous year we were growing at a rate of 4.2%. So it is the real story. I mean, we are contracting at this point of time, and if you see as per the data which is publicly available, only China is the country in the world which is growing at the rate of 1%. However, if you look at the data from 2021 and beyond, you will find some improvement in the growth scenario of India. So if we see for Indian data, it's like 6.2% for 2021. Now, if you go to further 2022, the data which is not captured on the slide, Moody is saying that India will further grow by 8% in 2022. So, what all this say about, I mean, the recovery, or I mean, what's aftermath once the COVID and whole pandemic may settle down? What will happen? So definitely we might be looking at a V-shaped recovery or a W-shaped recovery. We don't know that, right? Because the data which I was seeing a few months ago, the data was very different from what I'm seeing at this moment. So there can be different aspect to it. But no, it's really important to understand that if we are saying, or if other financial agencies is quoting that, okay, the Indian growth story will bounce back, and it can be like from 6 to 8%. So what would be the contributor of that, right? I mean, which industry will be contributing more, which sector will be contributing more? And since the session today is for just supply chain procurement, so what will be the impact on supply chain procurement and how they can contribute furthermore to this magic numbers? So let's start with this market factors, keeping in mind, and then let's go into detail of procurement and supply chain and what all we can understand from COVID. Please feel free to ask your questions. Like, you need not to wait till the end. We can make the session more interactive. You can ask your questions, and I will be having a look at, and even Abhishek or Preet can point out if there are any questions coming by slide. Let's discuss that because your questions are more important than these slides. So I'd really appreciate questions. We can go to the next slide. So before going into this slide, any questions? I mean, any overarching questions on like the market trends or supply chain or procurement, which you might be thinking or which you feel that may make a difference in the coming time. So,
I
hmm,
think contactless delivery is what most of the firms are looking at. Making it as less reliable on people.
right. So maybe more reliance on technology and making it touchless and contactless, and so that the safety features can be enhanced. Such kind of things definitely people are looking at, and that's very good point, and that's where your supply chain and procurement, na, especially the last mile delivery, come into picture. So before going into further details, I just wanted to start with this value chain. So whenever we are going to understand different functions, and especially the supply chain and procurement function, it's really important to start with this value chain. So how any typical organization works and what's the importance of the operation. So if you see, the top layer is the organization infrastructure, right? All the lead CXO, the leadership, the management, the finance team, the corporate finance team, the legal team, and the strategy and planning team. They are the apex layer, and they are the decision makers who take decisions in respect of like what will happen in the organization, what is going to be a vision, mission, 5 years plan, 10-year plan, that kind of a thing. Second is obviously the HR people, right? Who the whole the people and the talent part. So that's where I mean you can see that how your people and talent is going to impact your overall hire to retire value chain. Now, if you just see, this is the second important stuff once you are going further below down. Now that all the technology and all the databases, right, and all the ERP supporting tech and the MDMs. So if you see, any company nowadays works on an ERP. ERP can be your SAP or can be your any other platform. There can be further supporting tech which runs on that ERP, and there will be a lot of database, right? I mean, there can be vendor database, there can be price master, there can be customer master, there can be simple employee database, and all that kind of stuff. And then comes the procurement, right? Right from the sourcing decision, shortlisting a supplier, and then getting the procuring a material from the suppliers to your firm or to your warehouse, the whole procurement bit. So right from the procurement until the bottom layer, that's why we sometimes will also call it the bottom line. That's really important, right? I mean, hold from your the inbound logistics till the point of your services, and that's where your major crux of the operations lies in. So if you see procurement, logistics. So once the procurement has been done, there is a movement of the goods from the outside. You can call it raw material or MRO movement from the outside to your warehouse, or you can say factory. Then there is whole, I mean, storing the material. That's you can call it the operations part of it. Processing the material, which is nothing but just your manufacturing part of it, and then doing all the internal audit controls and everything having in place. Once the finished good is out, then your outbound logistics come into picture. How your distribution network, how you can, I mean, move your finished products from inside to the outside. And here, the work of the marketing and sales team will start. Marketing and sales team will ensure like what are the different channels from where I should be marketing my product. What kind of product do I have? What are the my customers and where I mean they are coming more on which platform? Is it social media, billboards will suffice, article in a newspaper or advertisement in a newspaper, what? And then comes the salespeople, right? They give the all the promotions, all the advertisement, right? And all the advantages to the maybe shopkeepers, retailers, distributors, everything. And in the end, once the product has been sold, comes the services team. The rules of the services team is to ensure that they are the face of it, right? I mean, they may be your customer facing people. They may be customer service agents. They can also be your maintenance persons, who do the maintenance and all that. And there comes the delivery guy. Now it's important to understand that, like Preet was talking about touchless, right? So services is the area where you, let's say, if somebody is coming to your house for maintaining any product, or somebody is coming doing the last mile delivery. So here is the area where maximum automation, or I mean transformation, should come into picture, so that customer will have more trust, because this is the layer which is directly interacting with the customer, and that's the layer which is mostly minimal focused, and maximum focus should be to this layer. And once the whole thing, the whole value chain is structured right, then it's where you get the margin. If the whole value chain is somehow fragmented or fractured or broken in anywhere, if the linkages are not proper, if any of the department, you can just see, right? The initially the flow is from top to down, then from left to right. If any link is broken, or if let's say your any department is not functioning, especially your services department is not able to convince the customer, then the margin part will not be there. Otherwise, the margin part will be there. Now, so we till now we have talked about two stuff, right? The market factors, which are really important, and second is the value chain, which is base. So keeping these two things in mind, let's jump on to the next slide. So, before coming on to the recovery part, let's understand what was the impact of COVID on the procurement and the supply chain space. So once the lockdown was announced, it was very abrupt, and the whole things like you should not be moving out, train is stopped. I mean, all the buses is stopped, everything. So whole demand, you can say, just died down, right? I mean, nobody was buying non-essential stuff. Everybody was buying essential stuff. Now, even in the essential stuff, people were hoarding materials. So let's say on one part, my non-essential stuff is not at all being consumed, right? On the other part, my essential stuff is consumed in much more greater demand than what it was prior. So both the side of the items are facing different kind of problem. One side is facing the problem of the surplus, the other side is facing the problem of shortage, and that too not, I mean, minus to plus 10%. That's also on a huge scale level. So that the internal factor, I mean, abruptly, I mean, there was huge, you can say, stress on the supply chain on the both sides, essential commodities as well as the non-essential commodities. Now, once we talk about supply chain, the disruption in supply chain was not just internal. So the all the you can say fiasco, the chaos with our border nations, like you can say with China, with other nations, the international supply chain also broken down. Not just the international supply chain, you can also say, like, what do you see of China is creating the sea route, right? The Silk Sea route or the Arctic Sea route and all that. They have the ports across borders, and they are now just focusing on the international supply chain. But somehow our country may have lacked in this area, and that's why we were also facing the crunch of, let's say, I can give you some example. Let's say if I'm talking about the pharma division, we procure a lot of APIs from China. If we talk about manufacturing division, we procure a lot of iron ore from China, steel from China. So whole our raw material thing was dependent upon other country, and that's where the broken of other supply chain externally. Now let's talk about the market factors, right? So this was like whole internal and external supply chain and the operations, I mean, slowing down because of the decision which was made by government with respect to the welfare of the people. Now, even the outside country was slowing down. The oil prices were hit. The gold prices were rising, and whole, I mean, the geopolitical situation in the country, because this was a pandemic. I mean, this was affecting all the countries in the world, especially bearing one or two small countries. It was across the world. So the market factors were not also favorable. Now, above all, the lack of preparedness. If you see, most of the firms were having the business continuity plan, but somehow they were never tested, or they were never tested for such scenario. Let's say for a country down situation, what should be done? So the scenario planning was missing. The commands, no, none of the organization were having command center or the nerve center in such situation. What should be done, right? Let's say the whole country operations has been shut down. Then what should be done in that condition? Especially country like India, the hygiene focus was not top notch, right? If you compare us with any other European nation and all that, so people were really worried. Let's say if I have to go to a hospital or something like that, how I can ensure my safety? So if you see the whole supply and demand side, right? The supply side, the demand side just went down, and the supply side for essential commodities, I mean, they were facing a stress. For non-essential commodities, I mean, they were facing a surplus. The whole supply chain was disrupted during the pandemic. So this was the whole COVID impact. Before going into the recovery initiatives, I would not mind any questions or anything which you have in mind which you want to ask. We can take some questions and go ahead. It's fine. You can ask the questions in the end as well. That's okay. We can go on to the next slide. Yeah. So till now, we started with market, right? I mean, how the whole world is predicting India's growth or not. Second, we started with, I mean, what are the basics? I mean, let's say if you want to talk about any value chain, what are the basics we need to consider? After we just talk about, okay, these are the basics I need to consider. But what happened during the pandemic, right? Which side was feeling stress and which side was not feeling that kind of stress? Now let's talk about recovery initiatives. Like what I mean, okay, this is the situation, this is the reality of the ground. But what in terms of short term, medium term, and long term can be done? So if you see, most of the organizations, because supply chain procurement are part of the, like you can say, bottom line or the bottom operations. So the idea is to preserve and reprioritize cash. I mean, whatever cash which a firm has, they need to preserve it and they need to spend it into the right, you can say, suppliers, into the right networks, right distribution channels. Now, it's important to understand how it can be done, right? So if you see, there was a focus on digitalization even before COVID, but it was not end to end. There were a lot of broken ends which required fixes. If you see, there was limited visibility on the spend, which was across categories, and that sometimes it was ended up being more surplus expense across categories. There was lack of prioritization, there was lack of consolidation of suppliers, and that was causing a problem. Now, in the short term, there also talk on the spend visibility enhancement. There is talk about the prioritization and the consolidation of suppliers, and that will cause a change because you have less suppliers to manage. You can focus more on getting maximum value out of them, ensuring a good relationship with them, and then fixing your digitalization because now they are your partners and your focus is on your partnership with the suppliers. Suppliers no longer will be treated as, I mean, an individual entity or like a vendors. Now the focus is on more supplier management, and even in supplier management, who are your top suppliers who can help you in the across the value chain. These suppliers can be your raw material suppliers, they can be your processors, they can be your outbound partners, because without partners you won't be able to sustain this overall supply chain, the procurement model. So in the short term, this is the focus. I mean, what can be done. Now in the medium term, let's say if I'm making a plan and my plan is to now, let's say, reach to a tier 2, tier 3 cities, because I feel that in my top cities, I have exhausted most of my resources. Now the stress testing and the scenario analysis need to be done, right? I mean, you need to take use cases. Let's say if the pandemic will come, then there is scenario A. I will ensuring my movement of the goods like that. Let's say scenario B will come, right? Your consumer non-durables. Let's say you are selling washing machine during pandemic or something like that. How you will ensure that most of your products are not in go down, and I mean they are produced optimally enough so that they can be consumed, or it should not be, I mean, having a lot of severe effect on your pockets. So that's what stress testing is, right? I mean, creating multiple scenarios and kind of seeing in scenario A, B, C, D, E, what else you would be doing. Penetration, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities, is really important at this moment because people have money to spend, but there is lack of channels in terms of, I mean, lack of finances, lack of, you can say, the delivery conditions. Is still like Flipkart, Amazon are not delivering into a lot of tier 2, tier 3 cities. Also, I mean, there is lack of awareness as well. So penetration to the tier 2, tier 3 cities for all the firms is really important. People are seeing ads. I mean, if you talk about FMCG, they're everywhere, right? I mean, but if you talk about other brand or something like that, there can be still a challenge there. The third thing is like in the medium term, it's more around agility and adjustment. I mean, let's say if some situation occurs, how much agile is your organization is to absorb the shock and kind of adjust to the new conditions. And the agility and adjustment come once you're focusing on your end-to-end digitalization. Once your whole process from end to end is more manual in nature, it would be really difficult to, I mean, be more agile. And now the fourth part, which medium term, which most of these firms will be doing, is around the smart forecasting. So till this point, the forecasting was mainly based upon, you can say, historical data, and there was less and less focus on the market factors, especially the geopolitical factors. Going forward, the focus on the geopolitical factors will be on the right. There will be usage of cognitive and AI technologies to ensure that whatever I'm forecasting right, correct? Because if you see the previous year, every forecasting agency was predicting that India will grow by 4 to 6% in 2021. Then COVID come. Now they're saying India will contract by minus 4.5%. I mean, so just you can see like from 6% to minus 4.5%, it's like 11% gap. I mean, so how you are forecasting it, that because I mean everybody will say, right, COVID happened, COVID came and announced and such things happened, but still can there be more smart forecasting to it? So that's what is going to be thing going forward. In the long term, there will be more focus on, like, let's say if I want to strengthen my supply chain procurement, how can I develop my suppliers, I can ensure that my relationship with suppliers is so strong that even for them I became a number one, you can say, buyer. And being a number one buyer for your supplier is going to be really important going forward, because you need, it's not just like that you need to treat them well. You also, if you want the top notch services from them, you should also be in the platinum list of their respective, I mean, suppliers. Now, this pandemic requires some change into your organization, the way you think, the way you, I mean, plan. And this will come again once your whole focus is settling on, let's say, there can be some example of change, like work from home model. There can be also something like that, okay, more and more talk around how you can ensure the emerging tech is being embedded into your overall procurement supply chain space. There will also talk around, okay, each my organization is agile enough, I mean, will it be able to, I mean, sustain all the changes? There will be also talk around where the business continuity plan which my organization had was really effective, I mean, do I need to have some change into it? The risk management principles which I have in place, are they really effective? Are they going to sustain this kind of pressure? These are the thoughts which need to be went in once you're doing the long term strategy for any of your organization. Now, what in the end matters most, the most important thing, if really they want to be agile, risk, I mean, able to absorb any kind of risk, ensure that they're giving best to the suppliers and to their internal employees, it's really important that they should be truly digital in procurement and supply chain management. The truly digitalization is the need of the hour. Fixing all your broker linkages, ensuring end-to-end transformation is important going forward for the recovery of the overall operations space. So that's what I mean. Most of the companies will be focusing on the short term, medium term, and the long term in the coming time. So before going further, if there are any questions, happy to take, or we can move on to the next slide.
Yes, sir. I have a question. So we are seeing that a lot of e-commerce is emerging. That is what the model which most firms are trying to follow. Because of this pandemic, it's also given a chance to reevaluate this model. And what do you think, apart from retail, manufacturing firms, and in that space, how e-commerce will impact?
Yeah, so if you just leave retail aside, I mean, let's just talk about any other space, right? Let's just talk about, you can say, manufacturing or something like that. So e-commerce is going to play a huge role. If we can say, a lot of, I mean, new startups are emerging where they are saying that, okay, I mean, the dealership model may not be that relevant. Directly from the manufacturer, the product can be delivered to the person. And even you see what happened with Tesla and others, right? I mean, you can just go and you can pre-book your car and you will get that car, correct? I mean, that's what happened in that scenario. Most of the companies are going to follow, most of the consumers even want this model, and they just want to cut all the commissions and all the process which will just go in between. And that will happen now in the coming time, because consumers also want to, they, especially the Indian consumers, they are very, I mean, very conservative in spending, and the loyalty in India, if you see, I mean, we Indians want the best quality at the minimal price, and that is going to happen only when you are cutting all the middlemans and you are coming to the e-commerce, all everything. Just moving little bit into, I mean, the brick and mortar side. If you see, the DMart were, I mean, mostly a brick and mortar based model, right? And what happened that even during the pandemic, they have just quickly came up with the app. Now they have started delivering the groceries. So right from the delivering the groceries from their products, even other firms are following this model, and this model is going to spill over into the other sectors as well. So because that's what, I mean, can help to ensure that the supply is uninterrupted even during such scenarios, even the pandemic kind of scenarios.
Right. So mostly things might shift towards made to order more instead of made to stock. That could
Right.
be one case,
Right,
right?
right. Because once you, I mean, are in that loop of stocking, that can be a challenge, because I mean, it can be challenging in both ways. Like, so for non-essentials, the challenge was, I mean, they were surplus. For essentials, the challenge was there was limited supply in the respective, I mean, areas. So that would be, I mean, once you have this e-commerce model more, you would be able to directly connect to your consumers. And you might be seeing that Amazon and Flipkart, even they were delivering during pandemic by taking prior precautions. So all the things which were on the e-commerce, they were, I mean, kind of, they were more or less uninterrupted supply, especially for the essentials, and nowadays even non-essential stuff as well.
Right, right. Okay.
Hello. Hi, Vikas. This is
Hi,
Akshat.
hi, Akshay, good afternoon.
My question, good afternoon. So my question is related to new product development. Like if I'm talking about the auto industry, that they have a challenge to convert the engine from BS4 to BS6, and they had this plan. Their plan was started before 2 years, and how within these 2 years the smart forecasting will help them to capture the all type of market scenarios and all type of what I can say, the situations, what happened in next 2 years. Like no software does provide this type of 2 years of smart forecasting. So they already invested a lot of things, because a lot of money into their resources, into supplier as well as supplier. So how the new product development will affect, and how it is going to be, what will be the revive scenario for them?
Right. Very good question, Akshat. So if you see, Akshat, like initially we were talking about shared caps, right? I mean, 6 months back, we were talking about the how the future of mobility will be, and the future of mobility might be shared caps, correct? Now people are saying that do
Hmm.
not take shared cab, take your own cab. Even people are saying that do not take public transport and take your own transport. So uh, I was presenting during one of the webinar that automobile sector has been one of the adversely hit sector, and they might be taking approximately 8 months to, I mean, to 3 years, from 8 months to 3 years to recover. So it's definitely their hit, right? I mean, the plan was before to B6, but this was more of, you can say, compliance kind of a plan, right? Government wanted this to ensure that, I mean, you should not be emitting, emissions up to from a greater threshold limit. But now, if you talk about how they are going to go forward, people want to see and more innovations in their respective automobiles, right from MG Hector to any new kind of electric mobility which is going to come into picture. So people definitely, I mean, in manufacturing are looking for more and more automation, because that's the way ahead. I mean, even if you see, people might are also talking about running a digital car. I don't know whether this has happened or this may happen in the coming years, but that's what the future of the mobility, or you can say future of the manufacturing, may be. Now, smart forecasting, I mean, it does not matter how you are making your forecasting more smart. There will be definitely a deviation going forward. The deviation can be demand falling from the customer side, a supply not met from the producer side, or any market factor like COVID is going to come and they're just going to dethrottle both the demand and supply side. They will be there. However, with cognitive into picture, considering the geopolitical environment, because if you say COVID was, I mean, was kind of arising since November 2019. However, our forecasting tools were not smart enough to gauge that and just trying to show a picture that, okay, I mean, something geopolitically is happening in a country and it has a potential to impact a lot of countries. Going forward, I see a trend that forecasting will be more smart. Also, the manufacturing and mobility will have more and more transformation and automation. That's what consumer wants, Akshat.
Okay. So can I say that the smart forecasting would be reduce the deviation level of compared to a normal forecasting or a time series forecasting?
Correct, Akshat. Right. I mean, that's the perfect understanding. Correct.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akshat. I think we can go ahead to the next slide. So I was just thinking like how the role of the operations will be in the new normal, right? I mean, where all the role may change or may enhance. So if we see in terms of, I mean, supply chain visibility and resilience, so now it will be really important for operational professionals to focus into this area. How I can ensure more visibility into my networks, into my the performance of my suppliers, and where my cash is, like whether the cash is lying more in the inventory, where the cash is lying more into the network, or where the cash is, I mean, getting invested more on the suppliers. I mean, I should have the all the visibility on that. What's my geographic footprint, from where I'm procuring? Am I Am I procuring globally and spending locally, or am I procuring locally and selling globally? All those kind of pictures now will come, and especially the agility part. I mean, whether I am able to change my decisions and able to change course of my actions in shortest period of time. Especially, I'll just give you one example. There are a lot of FMCG firms who were able to produce sanitizers, right, even on the base of their other products. So COVID hit, the hygiene products or hygiene, you can say series were in demand, and a lot of, manufacturing, or you can say FMCG manufacturing, just shifted towards that. So that's what agility is, right? I mean, you are able to cope up with the market factors and you are able to create that change. But let's say, even you might have seen a lot of alcoholic, like AB InBev and other companies, they had started making the sanitizer because they were just really quickly adapting to the change. Agility was there, and they were, quickly producing stuff which was really demanded by the consumers at that point of time. Even selling it, for commercially, non-commercial, that's a different story. But people were agile. Now let's talk about E2E digitization. Now the operation people just cannot rely on the, you can say, operationally efficient part. Now they just really need to focus on this digitization bit. The digitization in terms of the whole value chain, the value chain we discussed on slide number 2, right from once the sourcing start till the point when the product reaches to a customer, correct, and the customer service. So it's a chain, and if any of the link is broken, then even in the pandemic like COVID, you might not be able to meet the demand of a consumer if any of the chain is broken. So end-to-end digitization is must. That can be done through your emerging tech, enhancing the experience of the customers, having the focus on the operating cost, and increasing the productivity of not just your operations but also your employees. Now, what the next focus can be? So it will not be like, so now the focus is more towards the integrated operations bit, right? The talent which you will having, the inbound or logistics talent, or you can say the processing talent, there will be minimal border. So cross skilling of the talent is going to be more and more important. There need to be more and more collaboration tools where people, or you can say employees from different functions, can come and collaborate better. New safety norms, and now having SOPs or checklists to ensure that everybody is following the safety norms, global manufacturing policies, global operating policies, and how people are adapting to the new operating model. It can be work from home model, it can be anything else, how they're adapting it more. In the end, more focus on the coordination with suppliers, consolidation of suppliers, and the management of suppliers, because suppliers are going to be partners and most important, you can say more important than ever, and strategic coordination is required. That's when you can manage your risk in a situation like COVID, or you can also get the best out of your suppliers. So that's what the role. There will shift in the parallels, or you can there is shift in the plates of how the operation people would be working in the new normal, and that's what all they need to imbibe. Next slide, please. So before going to the next slide, so I had, this much to discuss on the supply chain part. I just thought that, since I'm getting this opportunity to interact with all of you, it's important to give you a bonus as well, right? The bonus in terms of how you can maximize your 2 years MBA learning or 1 year MBA. I don't know if all of you are in first year or second year, or how you can ensure that you can move up the value chain and you can make the best of it. So before going to the last two slides, are there any further questions on the part we discussed?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Prerak, you're audible. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. So my main question is that due to digitalization and most of the work has gone digital on internet, don't you think that the role of the stockkeepers will go down, because mostly the trade will happen on internet? Like, you have a supply to me, you have a product, I also have a consumer who is ready to consume it. I will be just a matchmaker or bridge between you, and it can be directly couriered or being imported or exported without any stockkeeper or any middleman. So don't you think the role that was major till now, giving an employment source to most of the people, will be reduced after this COVID-19?
Right. So, Prerak, I will say, I'll give example to you from my internship which I was doing in Dubai. So, they were really following this digitalization bit. So now you're talking more about just in time, and if I'm just procuring something online, then I'll be just getting it directly from the manufacturing firm.
Yeah.
So the material should get stored somewhere, and wherever it will get stored, now the stockkeeper won't be just, I mean, keeping the stock physically. So let's say if I'm having a stock in my, you can say in my godown, then I'd be able to predict. I will be able to predict what is going to be the demand in the coming time, and what is going to be the supply from my production house in the coming time, and the real time inventory management is now will be the need of the hour, the real time inventory management, and I should be able to reallocate. Let's say if the demand is high in the north part of the country and it's not so high in the south part of the country, but I have my warehouses in all the four directions of the country, then in which warehouse, or you can say in which go downs of the respective manufacturing unit my product should lie in. So all those kind of, I mean, smart decision making now will come into picture. So most of you would be seeing that if I'm ordering something from Amazon, most of the time it is coming from Hyderabad or Chennai. Very minimal time it is coming from my nearest hub. I mean, my nearest hub is Delhi, but it's not coming there, right? I mean, it just shows that there is requirement of reallocation, and it will happen only when the focus has reshifted towards the whole digitalization bit. So I won't say that their role will be reduced, but it will be repurposed. Repurposed in the sense that there will be real time tracking, real time reporting, and real time, you can say, reallocation of the products.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure, I think we can, I mean, go into the last two slide, and we can cover our questions in the end. Going to the first slide of the bonus, we can move to the next slide. Yeah. So when I look at my MBA, so this was, I mean, the cornerstone for me once I was, I mean, planning my 2 years. So on the left hand side, you can see what are the don'ts. I mean, you should not be waiting for the instructions. There should not be lack of commitment, and the confidence and the time management is a key. And all the baggage, right? I mean, I'm coming from this background. I have less work experience, whether people will recognize me in the industry and or not. So all kind of baggage should be left aside. Now on the right hand side, before going into the center, I mean, it's more about like what are the do's, right? I mean, you need to be proactive. You need to show agility. You need to be market savvy, and you need to show the 360-degree learning aspect. And what is the meaning of all this, right? I mean, if you look at the Abhishek and Preet, they're doing their best. I mean, they're very proactive, agile enough to bring the best people from the industry, right? But let's say if you're not coming to the call on time, and if you're not ensuring that, okay, the knowledge which you are getting here, if you're not able to apply it into respective areas, that's a loss, right? I mean, that's a loss on the proactiveness side, on the agility side, and how you can be market savvy. Now coming to that, so whether you are reading one newspaper every day, whether you are going into the detail of it, right? I mean, whether you are focusing on not just academics, but also on your extracurricular, co-curricular, and position of responsibility. How you can do that now? Let's focus on the circle now. Start with business communication and soft skills. It does not matter from where you are studying. I mean, your business communication, your conversational skills, and your soft skills are really important. How you're dressing, how you're looking, whether you have a smile on your face or not. I mean, whether the eye contact is maintained or not. Now, in the given virtual world, I mean, how you are ensuring that, okay, now even in this kind of a world, you are able to interact and communicate better. Are you networking enough? Are you networking with the right people? Are you networking with your esteemed alumni base? Are you networking outside? Are you maintaining the connect? Are you active on those platforms like LinkedIn and other platforms? Let's say the thing for 360 learning is not to say that you should not be focusing on academics at all. So at least there should be some theory, right? So there should be some concept you should be comfortable with. Out of all the subjects out of your MBA, there should be one or two subjects where you're saying, okay, these are the two important subjects which I need to be focused about. These are the content which I need to be focused about, right? I mean, if I'm saying let's talk about any two content from your time at a B school, you should be able to comfortably talk about it. It can be anything. It can be finance subject, it can be sales and marketing subject. We should be knowing the writer of the book, you should be knowing the top two chapters, you should be knowing the theories and the theorems and the framework from that subject. Business awareness can be maintained once you are ensuring that you're reading one newspaper daily. If you're not doing that, you are not going to be a business savvy person. General awareness is all around your geopolitical happenings, which is in your surroundings, not just India. What's happening in Asia? What's happening around the world? That should be the focus. Apart from the academic and content, there should also focus on the extracurricular stuff, the co-curricular, the positional responsibility which you might be holding in your campus or outside as well. Let's say if you're not getting the opportunity, what you're doing outside and how you're ensuring that okay, now I can say that I have done my 360-degree all around development. Resume preparation is really important, right? I mean, resume preparation is kind of an end product of all this thing. But writing a crisp line, ensuring that because resume is kind of a virtual version of you, right? It's your clone, and you should be able to do justice with it once you are focusing on the overall 360-degree development. Now, certification and projects can be done, and the next slide you will get to have like how you can do it. You need to be tech savvy as well, right? I mean, you should not be just talking about the buzzwords like RPA, AI, VR. You should be having one or two use cases ready in your favorite area, in your respective area. And that's how you can say, okay, now I'm focusing on the all around development as an MBA professional and I'm ready to work with all the esteemed organizations. And that's when you can say that. No, I mean, what you can do and further what you can, you can practice in your the remaining time of your management education. Go to the last slide, please. So these are some basics which as MBA students which we need to follow, right? I mean, I should be reading one newspaper daily. I should be following all kind of ADB reports, Modi, Fitch, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, Indian Monetary Fund, International Monetary Fund, and I should also be reading about the industry trends from different consulting firms, non-consulting firms. I should be having a peaceful mindset. I should be ensuring that okay, I'm attending webinars. I am attending the mock interviews. I should also be going to the website like Coursera, EDX, dare2compete.com. So that's when you can say that, right? I am focusing on the all-around MBA development. But you will be having this PPT, right? After this call, Abhishek or Preet may forward this to you. You can read it you can read it in detail. But the important thing is base, right? I mean, your health, the discipline, the consistency, networking, and the confidence. So these are the 5 pillars of your base. Without that, even the top 3 things which you're saying, what to read, good placement enables, won't be sufficing your case. So that's what all you need to do. So this was the bonus I was thought like I should be providing to you in the interest of time. And today we got some time. So that's what you need to be following to ensure that you are, I mean, thorough with your MBA. So in terms of content, I had this much. I mean, we can go into the Q&A. You can ask the Q&A from the supply chain procurement side or from the bonus both. And feel free to ask any questions.
The last part was really wonderful, and we surely would like to implement all these great suggestions that you have given, and I think that's what we are trying to build our base on. So yeah, continuing with the question, what would be an example of maybe some new emerging technologies in operations like blockchain. So I think that is being implemented in various sectors, but how would you implement it in operations? Will it be a crucial role?
Right. So I'll give you some examples. So if you see in enablers, there is point number 7, buzzwords. It's around RPA, cognitive AI, AR, VR, cloud, and blockchain, right? So I'll take just one example of cognitive, which I recently implemented. So what happened that let's say if I'm a procurement professional and I have let's say 700 suppliers, I have 80 categories of the material and I have 700 suppliers to manage. Now I need to see like which category and which suppliers are kind of taking the maximum money of the procurement spending. So I can do it on the Excel manually. I can do it with the help of some, basic tool, or I can do it on the basis of cognitive tool. If I'm just doing it manually or with some basic tool, what maximum they can tell me? At maximum, they can tell me, okay, your category A is taking the maximum spend, let's say 20% spend. However, it is contributed by 12 suppliers, right? Or category B is taking second best spend and it is contributed by, let's say, 18 suppliers. But once I have started using cognitive, it has started telling me, okay, uh, your this category C is kind of, having more suppliers than needed, right? It is having 18 suppliers. And I feel that you can consolidate some of the suppliers in North region, you can consolidate some of the suppliers in South region and all that. So after your cognitive, intelligently, it started suggesting me what should I be doing further to enhance my overall supply chain spend, the procurement spend, and the visibility over it. So that was the usage of the cognitive. Coming to the RPA side of it, right? How it came is the use case of RPA. So if you see, even in procurement, there is a two parts, right? Sourcing part and the procure to pay part. Procure to pay part is a little bit transactional in nature. What are the examples? All your invoices, payments, invoice cutting, and lastly, kind of all the documentation part of it. You can transform this using the RPA. So what a human was doing that part for you, it can be done easily through any RPA thing. The transactional part of it, the transactional part of invoicing and payment. Now coming to what cloud is doing, right? Cloud computing and all those kind of stuff. Earlier we were talking about, more asset driven model, right? People were just thinking about how they can own assets and how they can be, having more control over it. Nowadays people are talking about as a service, right? Software as a service, or something, procurement as a service, that kind of a model where cloud is playing a really important role. So all the cloud services providing companies like your AWS, Google, Microsoft, and they are like hugely invest into this and providing, this procurement as a service, or you can say supply chain and all those as a service. Having stored all the data onto a cloud platform and then kind of doing the data analytics and decision, enabling the decision making process of it through data driven insights. Coming to the blockchain, so blockchain is finding way into the smart contracting. If you see the contracting which is done is done into a lot of parties, right? Let's say there's one client, there is one supplier, and there is a supplier to supplier, which is called subcontractor. Now there should be trust, right? In the three body, in the fourth body, there should be trust. Okay, whatever the services which have been provided, there is particular value associated with it, the finance value, and I'm getting that value, and there is no, you can say, a deprivation of interest of any of the parties. So the blockchain is coming into picture there. So blockchain usage can be into the smart contracting. So that's why I was saying. So these are the buzzwords, but you need to study these buzzwords, or you can say find out the use cases across supply chain and procurement space. So I had just thrown very basic and very few examples. You can delve more into it, and you can read more and more about it. So these were the some highlights from the emerging technologies.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And there's one more thing that I think most of us should also focus on, which is, I believe, is design thinking. And so, what role do you think it would play in our changing ecosystem, and how would it
Huge
help?
role. Huge role. I don't know how much of you are, aware of the design thinking. So I was attending a workshop recently, and very basic concept, like once there is a door, when you push and when you pull, right? We are always confused whether to push or not. Correct. But let's say I'm removing the handle from the door, and now you have to go out. Intuitively, what you will do? You will just push it, right? So if there is no handle, if there is handle, you are confused whether to push or to pull. If I'm removing the handle, you are just saying you have to push the door. So just very basic example. This is what design thinking is. So design thinking is there to keep a customer at the center of your operations and now design things. So into your manufacturing bit, it can be as basic as, let's say, if I'm handling a product, if I'm doing something else, how it can be designed keeping in mind of my customer, right? How my customer should be getting the maximum out of it. It can be in terms of ergonomics, it can be in terms of value, it can be in terms of quality and usage. So definitely, Preet, very good question. It is going to play a huge role, and I would, appreciate if most of you are going and reading more and more about design thinking. So I've just given you one or two examples, right? You can read more and more about it. It is going to be fun, and it is going to be one of the emerging topics in the coming times.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Uh, I have one question on case study competition. So, as you have participated and won many case study competitions, so my question is, what should be the proper approach to solve any case, or where should I concern more?
A very good question. Can I know your name as well?
Mohit Savalia.
Hi, Mohit. Good afternoon.
Good
So,
afternoon.
Mohit, again, a good question. So, case study is very close to my heart. So, when I joined Nitty, so I was a fresher, and I mean, I had to learn what corporate people think and how they think and what kind of talent they hire. I thought that getting into case study might make more sense. Now, the same challenge which you're asking was in front of me how to do it. But after 2 years, what I have learned is, I mean, you need to have the strategy right. So strategy has multiple components. First example, in first year I lost all my case study competition. In second year I won all my case study competition. In first year I was making few mistakes, like I was not having the team right. I mean, let's say if I'm very good in PPT skills, it should be right team mix, right? I mean, if I'm good in PPT skills, my peer should, my colleague should be good into the Excel skills. There will be someone who would be good in speaking. Let's say if we are shortlisted for the second round, we are going to have presentation, and if there is nothing, nobody in the team who can, I mean, give a really brilliant presentation, then you are out. So in second year, so first the basic thing is having that team right. I mean, you should be able to select the, if there is three people team, what are the three people, and the three people should not be friends, right? I mean, it should be more like, let's say if I'm good in one skill, which is, can be PPT and storyboarding, who is more good in Excel, who is more good in presentation and presenting stuff. Second thing is identifying the right competition. So you cannot take part in every competition, you cannot win every competition. So play to your strength. I mean, what strength as well as your liking. Let's say if I'm my capability and my choices are like, okay, I should be participating more and more procurement kind of competition, then I should be, I mean, focusing on that. Third is the opportunities. Opportunity would be coming to your door knocking. So you need to go to Dare to Compete or to other pages daily, and you need to identify a lot of good case study competition which you can bring into picture. And that's how you can say that, okay, my team is right, I'm focusing on the right kind of competitions, and also I'm getting the opportunity to participate in it. Now comes the hard part. Initially you're going to lose a lot of competitions, right? Because there is huge competition. I mean, people from all the top B schools, even in your campus, they would be participating and winning. Do not lose hope. After 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you will start winning. So that's when you need to be wait for, that's the time you need to wait for, and that's when it will start clicking. It will come with time. Just with every PPT, just focus more on storyboarding, more on brevity, and in less words, more in visually manner. Try to say the picture, because they are going to analyze, the moderators are going to analyze 100 and 200 presentation. It will be difficult for them to identify a lot of good ones, and that's when you can say that, okay, these are the top ones, and you need to be focused like that. So these are some basics, I mean, you can follow for a case study competition.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I have one question. So I was presenting, so I was not able to ask the question at that time.
Sure.
So I have question related to restaurant industry. So basically, as we know, restaurant industry has been affected a lot during COVID-19. So how their supply chain part is going to be in future? What's your
Hmm.
expectation?
So that's very good question again, Abhishek, because travel and hospitality industry is one of the, I mean, biggest, I mean, facing the biggest turmoil after the COVID pandemic. So they have, I mean, if you see, a lot of people have moved towards the online delivery, right? I mean, a lot of restaurants are kind of delivering their stuff home. Even kitchens from the Marriott, they are delivering the food to your home. Their chef and all that, they are doing a lot of online webinars, and they are, I mean, so you know how you can make a good food out of a good recipe, and all those kind of webinars is happening from their side. They have also appointed the hygiene managers, or you can say the sanitation managers, which are going to ensure that now there will be huge focus on sanity and sanitation, and you can say hygiene. So they're going to say, okay, if you're coming to my you can say restaurant, then there will be a checklist, and we are going to follow each and every item, and that's how, when I can say, okay, whatever you're eating is fresh as well as it's sanitized, and it's, I mean, free, risk free. For that, they are focusing on the supply chain, like on the internal supply chain, to ensuring that whatever is being cooked inside is safe and secure and can be eaten, and whatever the raw material which is coming from outside is sanitized, washed thoroughly. So now the focus has more shifted toward these kind of aspect, and they are also diversifying in terms of how they can deliver more online and all that kind of stuff. Abhishek.
Right, right. Sir, one more question. So it's related to MBA part. So how one can plan out for the certifications? Like what are the
Hmm.
courses and certification one should target while going for the online platforms? Because
Again, good
that's the
question.
biggest
Right.
agenda for any MBA student.
Nee, that's a good question, Abhishek. So, uh, I'll take this puja for tour and travel industry. So for Abhishek, for this thing around your courses, I certifications. once I joined MBA, I had in mind that I will be going to a strategy consulting. So I just went to Coursera and I just typed the word strategy, and then I took the words of the bigger universities, right? I mean, like MIT, you can say Harvard, and you can say INSEAD and all that. So let's say what your interest area. If somebody of you interested in finance, if somebody of you interested in marketing, just have that one I mean word ready. I mean, what is your interest? Second, what is your favorite university? I mean, just put that word into your Coursera or ATS. Don't go for a paid certificate. You can have it non-paid as well, because the idea is to show that you have done the course. And even if you're not registered member and all, it's fine, right? I mean, the recruiter is going to just see the rigorousness of your learnings and all that. So you can go on Coursera, you can go on ADS. So there was one question on new product development. So I have done one Coursera certification on new product development and strategy development as from the Maryland University, USA. So you can focus on all those kind of certification if you're interested in those kind of area. So aligning as per your interest area would be a good thing, and then picking it from one of the leading university will give you an edge. Now coming to the tour and travel part. So if you see, Indian tourism is 80% inbound, right? I mean, it's mostly religious tourism and tourism for leisure from one part to let's say Goa to Simla to Northeast and all that. It's 80% inbound. 20% is, right, let's say people are coming from outside, right, for Agra and all kind of stuff. Since government has restricted or I mean put lockdown conditions, everything was, I mean, stopped from day one. But since the if you see what airlines are ensuring, so airlines, I mean, getting relief packages from the government. They are also saying that okay, we'll be just traveling 80% of the folks. They are also saying okay, I am going to ensure that you are going to wear the PPE issue, the face shields and the mask and everything like that. Sanitizer will be there, or the airport will be properly sanitized and there will be ready to go. So the whole ecosystem of airline industry is thriving hard to give you this message and comfort. Okay, it's safe to fly. That's the message they are trying to give. Now, if you're just talking about the other part of it, right? I mean, once you have traveled from place A to place B, even the destination part of it, right? I mean, they're ensuring that they're following proper sanitation guidelines and the hygiene conditions. So you can see a tectonic shift in a way we think. Like now, I do not want to spend on tour and I can say tourism, because that's kind of a luxury stuff, right? That's kind of a non-essential at this point of time. But let's say if I'm having this comfort, okay, now it's fine. It's fine to travel and all that. And the government, the agencies, as well as the partners, like the airline partners, the hotel partners, are putting in that effort. Then I might going to travel. So for 6 months to 1 year, definitely you're going to see a lot of dip, right? But after that, you will see like hotels will come up with a new pricing strategy. They will give you just room. They will unbundle the service. They won't give you the complimentary breakfast and all that. Airline might give you a lot of, I mean, discount, and they will, I mean, ensure that okay, you're traveling at a lower prices. They will shift in the pricing strategy and everything. All this is going to there with a message of proper safety and sanitation measures in place. And after 1 or 2 years, you will start seeing that okay, the situation might improve or will start improving after that point of time. So that's, I mean, that was a question which was asked onto chat. And this is my favorite industry as well, tourism and travel. And I kind of do a lot of research and work in this area. So both the questions were really good.
Guys, do we have any more question? If any, you can ask.
Yes, it will take time. It will take time. And you can say the recovery of travel and hospitality might take, I mean, from 6 months to 4 years. I mean, that's what the time frame we are looking at. Oh, so you are all from Gujarat, so you might be more interested into business and all the aspect of it. I don't know.
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, I
People
think
from Gujarat are famous
But
for business.
I feel that Gujaratis don't need MBA, right? I mean, you're doing MBA just for degree, maybe. I mean, you guys are already smart enough to make those decisions.
Right,
yeah, I
right.
think probably everyone will be an entrepreneur a few years down the line.
Right, right.
Okay.
Sir, looks like there are no any more questions. So let's conclude the session. So yeah, so it was a wonderful session. You started with explaining about the current market scenario and what are the expectation from it. Then you discuss about how a linkage in value chain can affect the margin part, and after that you spread a light on impact of COVID-19 on supply chain management and procurement as well. How lack of preparedness and market forces can affect the supply and demand part. Then you discuss about recovery part in short term, mid term, and long term. Then you discuss about the role of supply in new normal, and finally the best part for any MBA student, which was bonus. And I'm sure it is going to help out all of us. Thank you, sir, for guiding us with your knowledge and experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhishek, Preet, everybody. I
Thank
think
you, Vikas, sir.
there's one follow-up question, and let me take that. So, if you like to work in travel sector and if you're in first year, then it can be good thing, right? But if you're in second year, let's say, and if you're just passing out, it can be little bit. So you need to diversify. Let's say what exactly you're interested in travel. So let's say if you're interested into working to make my trip go IBGO type of firm, then you might need to little bit diversify your liking, right? I mean, you need to find a related sector where you want to work in, because if you see that travel and hospitality, they might not be hiring in that much in this year. But if you're first year, if you're starting it, I mean, it's fine. But if you're just going to pass out soon, it can be, I mean, little bit tough. I mean, I'm not saying like change your liking, but you can start working in a related sector and then you can jump onto the travel. Prerak, there is one question as from China. Most of the companies are shifting to Vietnam. Right? This is also a very good question, Prerak. So, if you see whatever you can, we are procuring from China, we can procure it from Taiwan, right? Let's say, and we can procure it from, you can say from Vietnam as well, like Indonesia and all that. And that's what is happening. And it's I don't say like India missed a global golden opportunity, because we were never like, I mean, we need to accept this reality, right? We were never electronic and manufacturing hub. So we are more like a services, and you can more into finished product manufacturing and all those kind of stuff. However, now a lot of firms are shifting from various part of the world to India, and they will shift as well. We need to, I mean, ensure an optimum balance of it. And as far as our raw material supply is concerned, we can procure it from other part of the world as well. If we are not, I mean, liking to go to China, we can procure it from Vietnam, Taiwan, and other part. But if you see the size of the Vietnam and, I mean, in other forms, they might not be able to, I mean, sustain the whole manufacturing thing. India has the talent, India has the distribution network, and the current government, as it seems like, they're very supportive of the initiatives. Even if you see the new education policy, single window clearance for any tour and tourism, I mean, initiatives, or any things of that sort. So the current government is also very supportive of that. So I don't see a lot of challenge in that. However, I mean, making India and manufacturing and the electronics nature will definitely take time. So I won't say it's a golden opportunity miss, but it can be a golden opportunity miss if this generation is not going to, I mean, take advantage of it. So that's how I think it, Prerak. Yeah. So really, I mean, so really thanks for the opportunity to speak and to connect with all of you. It was a really wonderful time. I hope I was able to give some value to all of you, and you would be, I mean, at least, I mean, learn something today new. So I'll just request the Abhishek and Preet to forward this as a takeaway document to all of you. Let's stay connected, stay safe, and enjoy the whole afternoon, the remaining part of the afternoon, and tomorrow I think you might have classes or something. Don't know.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, sir. It was really wonderful to interact with you and learn a lot of things. And we also have shared your presentation with our class. And I urge people to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, let's hope to have more sessions in future from you.
Perfect. Thank you, Abhishek, Preet, and the whole batch. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
See you.
sir. Same to you. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.